I've had a ton of real estate agents say, hey, I can give you a ton of clients. What kind of deal can you give me? I would say that's the first thing that they're saying. I would say like really just slow it down, because if I had $1 for every time a realtor said that, I'd have a decent amount of money. So again, so like, hey, would love to work with you. Give me your first client. I'll show you what I can do. We'll take it from there. We'll have a conversation after that. Then we'll proceed.
When your leads are low and your sales are slow, who you gonna call? Brush Buster.
What's up, everyone? Michael Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you're listening to the Brush Busters on the Painter Growth podcast. I'm joined with one of our coaches here at Painter Growth, Mr. Rich Watson. What is up, my man?
Morning, Mike. How are you?
I am stoked to be here. I hope you are too.
Absolutely.
So, Rich, before we jump into it too much, why don't we just share your qualifications? Why are you qualified to be a coach here at Painter Growth?
Sure. Yeah, so the last business that I ran was a cleaning and Christmas light company up in Canada. So had that for just shy of 6 years. Was able to sell that business this past January. So in terms of kind of some key stats, we had 4 crews, 10 full-time field employees, 1 full-time office administrator. And yeah, was able to sell it, systemized a bunch of things, got organized, and was able to sell that business for 2.3 times net profit this past January, and was able to have a good transition with the new owner, and 5 of my key employees actually stayed with the deal. So yeah, learned a lot through that process. And prior to that, a long time ago, I had a summer painting business when I was in university for a couple of years. So that's a brief background on myself.
Perfect. No stranger to painting, to service businesses, to business ownership, to exits, employment leadership. You got it all, man.
Something like that.
What have you, what are some of the things that you've learned since starting to, I mean, you've been coaching here for a couple months now. What are some of the things you've learned, since working here?
Yeah. So really the importance of keeping things simple for our clients. Being a business owner, which I totally get. I mean, you're wearing a lot of hats, especially at the start. And so it can be overwhelming in terms of, what do I focus on this week? What do I focus on this month? So what I'm really trying to work on is having a clear path for our owners, for our clients, in terms of like, hey, what are you struggling with? Let's make things really simple. Right now, you need to focus on marketing and sales, and let's build out those strategies so that we can get you booked up. And then we can focus on hiring, building a team, et cetera. So I'd say that's one of the main things, is really trying to make things simple. Mm-hmm. And finding the right solution for what our owners are facing.
Yeah, I like that. Simplicity is so underrated. Even at the Hormozy event I was at last month in Vegas, Jesse and I went to their acquisition.com mastermind, and we were blown away at how simple they were making business for us. And it was a room of 80 7-figure plus business owners, 7 and 8-figure business owners. And like the stuff that they were quote unquote teaching us was so basic. And it made us realize that, yeah, we overcomplicate business. Business doesn't have to be complicated, and simple scales.
Yeah.
You want to jump into a letter?
Sure.
All right. I'll read this first one. We don't have a name. This is from Fairfax, Virginia. So, hey there, I've been offered a potential partnership with a local real estate agent. Like partnership is necessarily the right word. With a local real estate agent who could refer clients to me. However, I'm sure how to approach establishing it and ensuring that it's beneficial for both. I started my business 2 years ago, and this is the first time I will try something like this. What steps should I take to create a successful partnership? We have a meeting scheduled for next week. First of all, I love this. Love strategic partners. But I'm going to defer to you first, Rich. How would you handle this situation?
Yeah. So from my experience, real estate agents can be a good strategic partner in your business. If they're good and they're selling, 10, 15 houses a year, where they're actually like, this is their full-time gig and they have experience, they're probably involved in the community. They probably have a good network and running a painting company. That would be a great contact to have, because for a lot of homeowners, the best thing they can do to improve their ROI on their house is getting it painted. In terms of that relationship, what I would say is, definitely meet with the realtor, see if there's someone that you may want to work with. I would say what I'm a proponent of is starting out small. So, hey, we'd love to get a client from you. We'll show you what we can do. Let's get that first job under our belt. Establish a working relationship. Let's make sure that your client's happy, you're happy, etc. Then we move on to job number 2. So in other words, I've had a ton of real estate agents say, hey, I can give you a ton of clients. What kind of deal can you give me? I would say that's the first thing that they're saying. I would say like really just slow it down, because if I had $1 for every time a realtor said that, I'd have a decent amount of money. So again, so like, hey, would love to work with you. Give me your first client. I'll show you what I can do. We'll take it from there. We'll have a conversation after that. Then we'll proceed. That would be just based on my experience. That's how I would go about it.
Yeah. If you do a great job, if you give me a really good deal, I'm going to send so many clients your way. It's like,
and then if you come in on one, you've kind of already sold yourself short.
Yeah. But also those clients ain't coming.
Not usually.
Yeah, not usually. So, yeah, I love strategic partnerships. Real estate agents are great. So the fact that this one, they've reached out to you, that's great. Now, to establish the partnership, I think the important thing is really understanding what they want. Everyone, every real estate agent, every property manager, every builder, every GC, every, interior designer has a different picture in their mind of what that relationship should look like, or what they want that relationship to look like. So for you as the painter looking for the work, it's your responsibility to figure out what they want that relationship to look like, because they're not just going to come out and tell you. You need to ask the right questions. So the first goal should be get a sit-down meeting, either coffee at a coffee shop, or bring by donuts or something to their place, get a sit-down in their office, and just start getting curious, asking questions. Like, do you guys work with any other painters? Have you worked with painters before? What kind of work are you looking for? You're looking for move outs, looking for move in, buyer side, seller side, flips. Like, are you looking to high quality, high end stuff? Or you guys do low end apartments? Like, what are you looking for in a painter? And then I can figure out if I'm the best, like number one, if I'm the best fit for you. And then if I am, how I can tailor my experience to make sure that you are ultimately happy at the end of it. Because that's what people want. People aren't buying, like, especially realtors, because they're one level removed. They're not buying the paint on the walls. They're buying the experience and the experience and the reputational improvements that they may or may not generate by working with you. Can you make getting something painted for them like seamless? And can you make them look really, really good in front of their clients?
Yeah, so yeah, I agree. And again, getting clear on what their expectations are, just like if they were your direct customer, asking questions. What have you won? Have you worked with a contractor before? Have you established this type of relationship before? What went well? What didn't go well? Same thing with your direct client. Getting clear on those expectations, I think, is key. So
I think a lot of people try to enter these relationships without that context, right? It's like, oh, you're a realtor, send me a bid. Or they'll like send a cold email to like 50 realtors. Hi, I am blank with blank painting. We do interior and exterior and residential and commercial and cabinet and industrial painting. We look forward to servicing your projects. As a token of our appreciation, we can offer you 10% off all projects. It's like nobody cares about that. They're not buying the paint on the walls. They're buying the service. So if you want to get in with these real estate agents, are you showing up? Are you showing face? Are you going out of your comfort zone, your little box, and actually showing up at their office and talking to the receptionist and shaking hands with the realtors and showing face and being present? Or are you just like hiding behind your computer and texting them and emailing them? Because like one will work and the other won't. All right. So time is of the essence. We're going to keep going. Rich dropped out. And let's go to the next reader. And hopefully you guys, when Rich comes back, he'll hop in. Cash flow control. Cash flow has been a significant issue for me. I have jobs, but I'm still a mess. For instance, I had to delay payments for my suppliers last month because I couldn't pay those bills. What can I do to manage my finances more effectively and ensure a stable cash flow throughout the year? Oh man, I love this question and I'm stoked to get into it. So cash flow, I mean, what it sounds like, what Edgar's saying, is that it sounds like he does commercial work. And when you do commercial work, cash flow becomes a bigger thing. If you're doing smaller residential 5 to 10K jobs, like You take a 25% deposit, you take 50% when you start, you get paid when you're done. Cash flow should not be a big deal if you're running a residential business. So if it is a big deal, you need to look at the terms in which you're collecting cash at the start and end of your jobs to make cash flow not a thing, because it's a fast cash business. You book a job, you take a deposit, you start the job, you take a draw, and you finish the job, and you get paid completely, right? Or you just take a deposit on booking and the rest on completion. So 20% minimum deposit to book a job, and then the rest 80% when you complete it. And you should not be leaving the customer's home at the end of the job, once a job is completed, without getting paid. And if you do that, you're going to have way less accounts receivable, and you're going to have much better understanding of cash, a much better cash flow cycle in your business if you're residential. Now, if you're also a commercial business, here's where things get a little bit more challenging. If cash flow feels challenging, you feel broke, you don't have money to pay your bills, but you know what's coming in, it's because commercial is tough. And a lot of the times, if you work for a big commercial builder or something like that, they're going to give you very poor payment terms, like net 60, net 90. And sometimes that 60 days doesn't start until like 2 weeks after the project is finished, because you got to invoice them, they got to approve the invoice, and then it's 60 days from there or whatever. So, plus if there's change orders, like that can delay it even more. Sometimes you're 3 or 4 months waiting on a check. And then the other thing to note is that, like, whatever your net profit percentage is, say you're 20% net profit, that means that you don't make any money until the very last check is collected. So if you're taking draws on like $100,000 project and they're withholding, 20% for whatever reason, like that last 20% is everything that you're going to make on that project. So everything before that, every single penny is going to go to pay your labor and pay your materials and pay your overhead. And that last 20%, if you collect that, that's your profit. But what happens is that because that's 2 months, 3 months out, you're collecting that net profit, but you already have so many other bills that have come in since then that disappears as well. So cash flow challenges often come from businesses that are taking on commercial projects that are beyond their level. So they're taking them on a bigger project than their business is capable of handling. And a way to think about this is, like, if you take a project, and I'm just riffing on cash flow. So if you take on a project, Rich is back, by the way. If you take on a project that's, say, $100,000, you should expect to have 80% of that project or 70% of that project's value of an outflow of money before you get anything in, right? On standard, like, contractor payment terms. So if you have a $100,000 project, do you have $70,000 of capital in your bank account that can leave your bank account for the next 90 days until you're able to collect that net 60 or net 90? So you have like the 2 months that you're working the project where money's going down. And then you have the 2 months from when you finish the project to when you actually get paid, where money's still going down. And then you get this huge inflow of cash that can pay off your line of credit, pay off your credit cards, pay your employees, pay everything before you actually make any money on that project. Rich, do you have any experience with commercial projects and long cash flow cycles?
Yeah, I have. That's a few like simple things that you can really manage are, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, setting expectations with the client.
I'm thinking commercial, more commercial, like, and like payment terms.
Yeah, so I'd say just being clear on what their terms are, and then see if there's room to negotiate that. So I mean, I've seen if you can get payment 25% up before the job, and then some key milestones throughout the job where it's like, hey, when this section's complete, we'll be getting another payment of 1/5 of the job, and just keep the communication tight. So I've done it in the past. It depends on the client, kind of how they work. But again, from the start, if you can just be clear on, hey, what are your terms? Get partial payments throughout the job, and then also just being clear on, what are your payment terms post completion, so that you can manage your cash flow expectations. And I'd say the key is depending on what size your business is at, while you're doing a commercial job, if you have enough staff where you can be doing small residential jobs on the side, so at least you have cash flow coming in that way, that could be another thing to help too.
Yeah, I don't think anyone should take on commercial work until they've substantially established their residential business. And then the commercial that they can foray into, they can test the waters with to see if they like commercial work. should be commercial repaints. So through realtors, through property managers, not through GCs or construction companies. Because with a commercial repaint, a lot of the time, if the property management company isn't like huge, they're just like a regular sized property management company, you get to help set the payment terms. And you can say, all right, here's how I work. I take a 25% deposit at the start of the, right when we book the job. I take 25% on day one, and then the last 50% upon completion, or whatever the terms you feel you need to manage your cash flow.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, if you're not at the point where you can take a big job and you're in a good cash position where like you've got whatever your cash burn is a month. And so like, for example, your fixed expenses, if you don't have whatever your margin is, having 3 months of that in your account so that you're totally good until you're really ready from a financial standpoint and a capacity and just a skill standpoint from your staff, it'd almost be better to turn away those huge jobs if you're at that level. Then take it, which I'm generally a fan of. But if you end up being in a really bad position, it's almost better to wait. Take the smaller commercial jobs where you can, again, like you just said, set the terms so that you know you're going to be all right from a cash standpoint.
Yeah, I had a client. We had a client a few months ago, and he's like just starting his business. Right, he's done like 10 jobs, and it's just him. I think he's got a helper, and he comes on to one of the group calls, and he's like, Mike, I just got an opportunity to bid on this $120,000 project. I'm like, dude, that will literally bankrupt you. You will not only not be in business, but you'll probably lose your house and your car for trying that project. And he's like, he couldn't believe it. He's like, no, this is like the winning the lottery. I'm like, no, dude, here's how the economics work. And we just like pulled it through. I'm like, can you afford 3 months at not only not making any money, but also paying out like $60,000? He's like, no. I'm like, okay, well then don't even think about it.
For sure. Yep. Yeah. Start small, build up, make sure you're in a good cash position. Those are all good things to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. I don't really have a hard and fast rule, but just like thinking about it, I probably wouldn't take on, like, maybe a rule of thumb could be, don't take on a commercial project that's bigger than your current like monthly revenue. So if you're doing like 50K per month, like you can probably handle a 50K job. But if you're doing 10K per month, you probably, I mean, you maybe could handle a 50K job, but like it's going to be tough, right? Depends on the payment structures.
Yeah, I mean that could be something. We can almost build some type of framework around that, because again, if you're just having to pay out your guys bi-weekly or every week, if you're on a 6-week job, how are you going to pay for that? Unless they're fronting you 50% of the job up front, which would be nice. So if you can get that, I would say sure, and then just really manage it efficiently. But most property managers or commercial clients won't front you 50% up front. So yeah, again, start small. Don't bite off more than you can chew, and make sure that your you can cover your cash burn. Yeah.
Also on big projects, job site management is so important.
And
like
scope creep. We talked about it.
Yeah. Scope creep is huge. Make sure you have a very clear list of inclusions and exclusions. But like when you guys are on site, like I remember we did this one project, there was like an airport hangar, and there was like 120 or 200, I can't remember, 200 window frames that were all identical, just like in a row, 20 feet off the ground. So you had to move the ladder so many times and all this stuff. And my guys were just getting absolutely destroyed by the job. Like they were lost. They don't know what they did, what they didn't do, what was first coat, what was second coat. They just had no idea. It's because I mismanaged the job. It was my responsibility to give them a daily plan, to show up, to help them figure out what they need to get done each day, to keep them on task, give them budgets, give them goals. And I didn't do any of that. I left them to their own, whatever. And they ended up just getting destroyed by the job. So job site management, hugely important.
Yeah. And like you just said, really just breaking the job into smaller digestible chunks. Like, hey, if you're, whatever the job is, like, hey, today the focus is X. The budgeted hours for this section, if we can break it down, is X. So you should be getting this done today. Perfect. Tomorrow we're going to come up with another plan.
100%. Cool. Well, now that you're back, let's jump into another letter. Hey, coaches. I recently completed a paint job for a client who's expressed dissatisfaction with the results. They mentioned issues like uneven coverage in some areas and a few drips that weren't addressed. I'm unsure of the best way to handle this situation to maintain professionalism and protect my reputation while also addressing the client's concerns. I'd appreciate any advice you can give me. Thank you for your guidance. You want to jump into this first? It's a loaded question.
Oh, that's a lot. I would say, yeah, a couple opportunities here. I mean, before it even gets to the end of the job, this is where, again, just like over communicating with the client, I'm always a fan of. Like, if it's a, whatever, 3 or 4 day job, just doing check-ins. Hey, just wanted to show you where we're at. Here's how it is. Do you have 5 minutes for a walkthrough end of day? Perfect. Because by doing that throughout the job, if there are little issues like that, those can be addressed when your guys are there. Equipment's still out. You can take care of it real easy. You get to the end of the job, if you haven't maybe had those touch base points and your guys aren't super neat and tidy, like maybe in this scenario, and you're done and you don't do a walk around then and you leave, it's like now you're in this kind of situation. So I would say when you're in this situation, just reach out and communicate with the client right away. Don't leave it. Address the issue immediately. The sooner that you deal with the problem, the better, generally. So I would say just reach out to the client, let them know that you're going to resolve this issue. Sorry that this happened. I would say those words, it took me a while to learn, but when there's a problem, even if you don't think it's on you, just take accountability and say, hey, sorry about this. We're going to fix it. Just want to chat with you for a few minutes so we're clear on what we need to do to get this addressed. But 90% of people, or 95, if you address it that way, they're going to, even if they're, frustrated, generally that'll bring the temperature down. And just by letting them know, I'm going to fix this. I apologize. It wasn't intentional. How can we get this addressed? And then getting your guys back there ASAP and fixing the problem.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind here for me. One is on the accountability side. So everything in your business that happens is your responsibility. Whether or not it's your fault is a different thing, but it's your responsibility. So you need to take responsibility for that and own up to it, even if it's not your fault. Hey, I am so like the customer doesn't care if it's you or your painter, your production manager, or your helper, or whatever. Hey, I'm so sorry that we did this, right? And this is my fault. Like, I will deal with this. All right, that's number one. But an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? I think that's how the term goes.
I like it.
So how can you prevent that from happening? And I think, Rich, you started, on that path. It's like, communication throughout the project, setting expectations. It sounds like in this project, there's some uneven coverage and some drips that maybe the quality, the training on your painters should have been a little bit better on the quality standards. One of the things that I did when I was training my painters, and I hired a lot of students and a lot of inexperienced people, is that when we were doing training, I was probably 10 times pickier on training sites than I would be on a real site. And so I would be looking at my clients, my team's work, and I would be picking out things that they were probably calling me crazy, and because of what I was picking out, the little tiniest paint chip or paint flake in the paint, or the teeniest little bit of paint that flicked onto a baseboard or something like that, and just really, really getting on my hands and knees and getting very, very close. But what that did is that, if I give them 110%, they're going to come back to me with 80%. And that's what you need to do is you need to show them where the standard is and go way beyond where the standard is and demonstrate that. And then they're going to come up to par and hopefully meet your standard.
Yeah, it kind of brings me back to a good quote in this regard where it's make big things out of little things and the big things won't happen.
Yeah,
in this case,
I love that.
I think that may be an old college pro quote. I'm not sure, but just in that onboarding process, really being, like you said, picky is a word, but it's just address that small thing so that they know, wow, okay, my expectation is that if there's a little drip or a little splatter, it's taken care of right away, so that they know right off the bat.
Yep. And then this can really go a lot further beyond the job site. Love that. And then just reminds me back to my training days. Is a painter, you're on site, you're waiting, you're in your truck, you're waiting for the painter to show up. It's at 8:00, but it's 8:02 and they just pull in at 8:02. It's okay, cool. Hey, all right, you're here. Let's get started. It's really? You're going to let that slide? They're 2 minutes late and you're there. You were waiting. It's like, hey, John, like, thanks for being here, but like, I just want to let you know that you were late today, and that's not acceptable. Like, we really need you. We start at 8, so we need to be ready to go at 8, not pulling in at 2 after. And it can feel like, oh man, I would hate if my boss did that to me. But like, explain the reason why that's so important. And like you said, make a big deal of the little things, and the big things won't happen, right? And you can explain why and tell them why that was a big deal and why it's important, because we do what we say and we respect our customers, we respect everyone's time, and like this is a value of our company. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I understand that. And all of a sudden, you made a big deal of a little thing. Now the big things are going to be like way less likely to happen.
Yeah, we could go on a whole tangent on just like time management and running a service company like a painting business. Your whole business runs on time. This is really, it's like setting expectations where like 2 minutes late is 2 minutes late. You got to be 5 minutes early to be on time.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to separate yourself too as a contractor, because a lot of contractors, if they're not looking at that professionalism piece, like this goes into sales tactics and stuff, literally just showing up on time, communicating with the client, over communicating, having your guys show up on time. They're going to know that, you respect their time and they're going to respect your time. So it literally will separate you from a huge chunk of the pool of the guys that you're competing against.
Yeah. I always like to bring that to estimates. Like when you're doing an estimate, give the homeowner an exact time and be there on time to the minute. Like it's no harder for you to be there on time. Like, hey, I'll be there between 10 and 11. It's like, no, I will be there at 11:30, or I'll be there at 10:30. And you knock that door exactly when the clock strikes 10:30. And if you're running 1 minute late, you call the client and you apologize for being 1 minute late. Hey, Joanne, I'm sorry. I'm just running 2 minutes late right now. I'm around the corner. I'll be there in a second. All right. I'm so sorry that I'm running late. Oh, you didn't have to call. You're only running 2 minutes late. Like, oh, that's no big deal. Thanks so much for calling. But like that, like gesture of respecting their time in that way is going to go so far that I almost guarantee that if you run 2 minutes late and you call them and you tell them that, you're going to book that job. Assuming you did a good setup call and both homeowners are there.
Yes.
Cool. Should we tackle one more?
Yeah.
You want to read it?
Yep. We'll get it. Subcontractor problems. Hi, Brush Busters. I've been dealing with issues related to subcontractors who frequently miss deadlines or don't meet the quality standards I expect. For example, a subcontractor I hired last month delivered subpar work, causing delays on a critical project. How can I ensure that the subcontractors I work with are reliable and produce high quality results? Thanks in advance, Mark.
Oh man. I can tackle this one first, I think. So basically, Mark's asking, he's got subs who miss deadlines, don't meet the quality, cause delays, don't show up, unreliable, things like that. Now, a big mistake that a lot of painters make is that when they hire a subcontractor, they treat hiring a subcontractor like a turnkey result. Hey, I have a project. I'm going to go through the phone book, metaphorically speaking. I'm going to find a sub and I'm going to offer them this job and I'm going to hand it off to them and I'm going to hope it's good. Now, that's missing so many crucial components to a quality project and quality hire. And the first thing that needs to be done is that when you're hiring a subcontractor, you need to treat that relationship the same way that you would treat hiring an employee, or very similar. You need to call them, you need to do a setup call, you need to ask about their previous work, you need to go meet with them, have coffee with them, take them through an interview process. Hey, what are you looking for? Hey, tell me about your past experiences. How would you deal with this situation? Have you dealt with homeowners before? Like, how would you deal with this? Like, ask lots of questions about their past behaviors, because past behaviors will indicate future behaviors. And just get to know them a little bit. And then once you do make a hire, set the expectations very, very clear. Have an expectations document, just like an employee. Hey, we expect that you're on time, right at 8 a.m. If you're going to be late, you communicate with me and the homeowner. You don't wear your branded clothes. You don't have a branded vehicle. And just go down the list of all the expectations that you expect of your subs. And then even though you've done all that, you still have to spend a day or two on site with them to make sure that they're up to par, that they're living the standards that you believe in your business, because ultimately they are representing you. They're representing you. They're representing your company. And if you do any less than that, then they're going to make a bad name for yourself. They're going to put your company into disrepute, I suppose would be the term. And it looks like we lost Rich one more time. He is in the mountains in North Dakota or Minnesota or something, living in a cabin in the woods, basically. So we need to get him a Starlink or something. But anyway, I think the main thing here is that the work needs to, like, the expectations need to be set right? You need to have a really thorough hiring process. You need to vet them. You need to call a reference. Like, so many people for subs and even for employees talk about calling references, but rarely do. And there's so much that you can learn from calling a reference, and also from telling the sub or telling the potential employee that you're going to call one of their references. It's like, okay, thank you so much for giving me this reference. And here's how you phrase it. You don't say, if I call them, what will they say? You say, when I call them, what will they tell me about you? Right? So that indicates to them that you are in fact going to call them. You're not saying, hey, if I called your reference, what would they say? No, when I call John, what is he going to say about you? Right? Because when you phrase it like that, they're going to see that that you're serious about actually calling a reference, and they're going to be that much more likely to tell you the truth, because they don't want miscommunication or mismessaging between what the reference says and what you say, what they say. So they might say something like, oh my, you know what? Like, he's going to say I'm a great painter, but he's also going to tell you that I was, wasn't always on time, right? Something like that, as an example. And you'd be surprised, like, for the most part, references are, they're living in self-preservation. So they're going to tell you the truth. They don't want their name to be necessarily sullied by a bad employee, assuming, of course, that the person that that they've given you as a reference is actually a past employer and not like a buddy or a friend or something like that. So definitely call references, do like thorough qualification calls, do in-person interviews, even with subs. And no matter what, you have to be on site with them for a day or two and set really stringent written expectations for your subs. And those expectations need to, like, just think through what a perfect relationship with a sub would look like. What time do they show up? What time do they leave? Do they pick up paint? Do you pick up paint? Do they talk to the homeowner? Do you talk to the homeowner? Who's picking up the check? Who's doing the walk around? Who's doing the touch-ups? Like, all of these little things need to be considered and written down and discussed ahead of time so that there are no missed expectations, right? Disappointment happens when expectations and reality don't align. So what can you do to maximize the chances that those things do align? So anyway, I was hoping to have a little back and forth with Rich. Unfortunately, his internet is not cooperating today, but I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Brush Busters. I had a fun time, and thanks for listening. Really appreciate you guys. And if you listened all the way to the end, I'm going to throw my free sales toolkit, or sales mini course rather, in the description. So you can go and just get a free little treatise, little training, videos, templates, and all, on your sales process. I'm gonna throw that in the chat, just as a little gift. Thanks for listening to the end. So have a great day, everyone.